Greetings and salutations, everybody. Welcome to my latest video. Another throwback here, which somehow doesn't feel like it's that old. Probably because it's held on to public view and awareness, along with the likes of like The Exorcist and other horror classics. And I'm speaking, of course, of Rosemary's Baby from 1968. This film is directed by Roman Polanski, who I believe I've only seen two other films of his, and that would be Chinatown and Frantic. It's been a very long time since I'd seen Frantic, so I don't really have much memory of it, and it also stars Farrow and John Cassavetes, the synopsis for which is as follows. A young couple trying for a baby moves into an aging, ornate apartment building on Central Park West, where they find themselves surrounded by peculiar neighbors. Okay, so we all know at this point, it's been 55 years after its release, what's going on. Where this ends up. But if you really don't, if you haven't heard anything about this, you may just want to take this as a recommendation and go ahead and check it out first and then come back and watch the video. All that I'll say is that it is a bit long, for a horror movie or mystery. It's 2 hours and 17 minutes, and it plays most of the time like a mystery before a lot of the horror aspects really come into play. So if you don't know where the story is going, if you haven't heard about it through parody or other pop culture references, where the story's going to go, and you don't want a spoiler, check it out and then head back here and pick up where you left off. So let's move on, because basically she's bringing about the spawn of Satan by way of an evil coven of witches in New York who have been in the area for decades, I believe a century even, if I recall correctly from this film. So throughout the film, we get this very slow build where if you didn't know it was a horror slathered with mystery and this thriller vibe and everything, you may just think it's about the troubles of a couple conceiving while the husband, played by Cassavetes, is trying to, land more work as an actor in the city, while, his wife, played by Farrow, is, kind of filling what was the stereotypical 60s housewife at the time, staying home. She's a homemaker of this new apartment of theirs. But as these strange happenings begin to unfold, such as suicide in the building, some very nosy neighbors, and, the husband getting a role in this play where the previous lead actor had suddenly been stricken blind, it's easy to connect with Farrow's character, who sort of represents the audience more than any other character, as you see all this unfolding. She's really the center of the story. She is Rosemary, after all, for Rosemary's Baby. So, all this kind of unfolds very slowly and slowly builds and builds and builds. But what on the outside may seem like she is, in becoming cut off from some of her social circles and having others speak for her, make decisions for her during her pregnancy, simply that maybe she's just paranoid about something. We as the audience know that something is definitely up, and eventually this angle of witchcraft comes into play, and the suspicions grow as her character, while pregnant, is just looking more and more sick. You can literally see her wasting away. Her eyes are sunken in and baggy and dark, and she's just looking almost emaciated in a way throughout this pregnancy with no great help. Something is going on. You can't trust people who are, quote, looking out for her. So even if you haven't seen the film, you've likely heard of it or seen some parody of it, like this dreamlike hallucination, or what she feels is a hallucination when she's becoming pregnant. They even parodied it in the film This Is the End, of all things, which is kind of strange.
This is no dream. This is really happening.
Not to mention others. But, by the end, she has, by the way of this evil coven, brought about the spawn of Satan. God is dead. Hail Satan.
God is dead!
Hail Satan!
Satan lives!
Okay. So although this film does run a bit long, which in my opinion makes it difficult, along with the intensity and the mystery and the slow decline of Rosemary, to kind of rewatch it over and over, this really is like this horror mystery classic that stands the test of time. It's still very creepy to see everything slowly unfolding the way it is, where you see these people coming into her life, where even if you know where the story is going, seeing how it gets to that point as these other characters are slowly manipulating her, trying to conceive, and then manipulating her pregnancy and everything about her life to bring this about. It's really creepy and one definitely worth checking out. And recently, with some changes in U.S. policies regarding Roe versus Wade, which for those outside of the U.S. who may not know is a legislation that our country had, which allows a woman the right to choose whether or not she wants to have an abortion and have that control over her body. There's been an uptick in interest in and references to this film, as a big part of this film, of course, is the decisions for her care during her pregnancy kind of being taken out of her own hands. That, along with the changes from the 60s, throughout, up until today and everything regarding the role that women play in society and how that's changed over time, it's kind of kept this film very relevant to those wanting to explore classics as this, and it will always be one that I highly recommend checking out. I'd recently picked it up on one of my little physical media Blu-ray runs. I found it used, I think, in FYE, and I could have sworn I'd seen this one, and I know that I had probably sometime in the 90s, but it had been so long, I only really remembered bits and pieces about the ending. So it was definitely a great one to, kind of check out. And speaking of checking out, thanks for checking out this other quick little entry of mine for Rosemary's Baby from 1968. It is strange that this one felt more like a newer film in some respects compared to the 40-plus Hammer films that I'd been going through and exploring over the past year or so, even though many of those films that I checked out were from this exact same time frame in filmmaking. This one was just done very differently. They laid out the story differently. Of course, it's based on a book, so they had that to go from. And from what I hear, it follows the book pretty well. That's kind of one of the reasons why it's so long. They didn't seem to do a lot of heavy edits from that. But it really stood the time as one that's very special and worth checking out. Anyways, that's all I got for this other little quick one here. Thanks for coming by and for sticking around to the end, as, along with liking, subscribing, sharing, commenting, really help out the channel quite a bit. And if you have any interesting thoughts about this film, go ahead and leave something in the comments there, get some conversation going. Have you seen it before? Is it something that you'd seen it in its early days, or is it something that you just recently came across? And yeah, we'll see how it goes, and I will see you in the next one. Hail Satan.